So here at Reader Pianos, we love to give tours of our restoration center facility, and we do it quite often. So I thought it'd be nice to take you through our restoration center and show you what's happening today in there. So come on in and let's take a look at what we are doing today. This is our showroom, and so we have our smaller grands and uprights on one side. We have our larger grands and our restored pianos on this side. Come back through these double doors. This is our restoration center. So when I start a restoration tour, we'll shut this because of the tuning, but when I start a restoration tour, we stop here and I give a little bit of an explanation as to what is happening and where things are. So this is the hallway, of course, into the restoration center, and as we come into this first space here, I like to clarify that there are a couple things that are going on here. Of course, we have piano restoration, and that includes replacing soundboards, pin blocks, bridges, action parts, hammers, refinishing the piano. That's like making the piano new again. So we're replacing parts, replacing the things that wear out. Of course, you keep the case. Most often you keep the keys and the metal parts, the metal frame, but all the other wood and felt and leather and string gets replaced on a restoration. The second thing we do is called a reconditioning, and a reconditioning is maintaining the original parts of the piano. So the piano may not be that old. It could be 20 years old or so, 25 years old, and the original parts are still fine. So we want to clean the piano up. We want to go through, make sure the regulation is good. We want to tune it, voice it, polish brass, and make it as good as new again. So in both cases, we're making the piano as best as it can be, but in a restoration, we're making it like new again. In a reconditioning, it's still a used or pre-owned piano, but we're making it as good as possible. So let's take a look. This first area here is what I like to call an overflow area. So we have a combination of pre-owned pianos that are getting reconditioned. We have some pianos that are customer pianos, some pianos that we own, and they're just kind of waiting for various things to happen to them. So they're here just waiting to be worked on. You'll see in this, we'll have many pianos going, and there'll be many pieces of pianos at a time, but they're all in order. So we know where they are, and hopefully by the time we finish this, you will too. So as we go through, we're going to follow the order that the piano goes through so that it kind of makes more sense. So come on over here, we'll go to the first stop in restoration. So this is where the piano is dismantled, and this is the first step because we have to take it all apart to be able to replace these parts. So we have what we call our work order. And this tells the technicians what is happening to the piano. On this particular piano, we're just doing the cabinet work and the rebuilding, which includes soundboards and bridges and pin block. And so we know what we need to take apart on the piano. For refinishing, of course, we have to take it all apart. Each piano has a job number, and each wood piece gets stamped with that job number, and then the small pieces get marked on a small box where all those pieces go. And when we're ready to put it back together, we have everything we need to do so. So after this, you can see here everything gets put on a cart and everything gets put in its various locations. So once they take the strings out of this, they're going to put the plate in a certain location. They're going to take the action out and put that in a certain location. And then the piano is going to come back here to the refinishing department. And that's the first stop in the restoration process. Not every piano gets refinished, so it might go directly to maybe soundboard area, or if it doesn't get soundboards, maybe it's going to go directly to the action area. But we're going to go through as if it's getting everything. And so as we walk through here, you'll see where the plates are stored. They all get a job number as well. And when we're ready to pull them out, we clean them and rebronze them. We'll do that when the time comes. But where we're heading is the refinishing area. And so this is our refinishing department. And we're gonna walk over here to this room. So this is a room that has very good ventilation. So this is where the finish gets taken off of the piano. In order to have a really good finish application, you have to remove all the old finish. And we also do other things in here. It looks like you're staining. Are you staining the
This is called grain filler.
Yeah, grain filler. Okay, so we're putting some grain filler in. There's different processes that happen, and they're working on wood that's already has the finish off of it. But if you want to take a look here, we've got several different pianos going at one time. Some the finish has been removed, some it will be removed. It's in line for that process. They do some of this more heavily chemical processes in this room because it's good ventilation and it's got a fan. So that's why we do a lot of these processes in here. Here's one that has had the finish removed. So you can see that there is still, you know, it's not super smooth yet. So this is the first step in the process. The second step is to actually sand it and get this nice and smooth. This will get a new soundboard, but we don't need to take it out quite yet. So that will come out at a different time in the restoration process. But now we're going to sand this down and we're going to fix any veneer that needs to be repaired and get it ready for the new finish. So in this department, we have many pianos going at one time because there's a lot of processes that have to sit and wait. For instance, after you remove the finish, it's a couple weeks to sit and have that piano wait because that process happens with chemicals and water, and you can't start sanding on the case until that is completely dry. So we like to give it a couple weeks. If it's humid out like today, it might take even longer. So it depends on the season. So here we've got some case parts. They're sanding them. They haven't done anything but that yet. These have some finish on them. And so there's just various stages of the process. Each piano is going to get sanded. It's going to get repaired. It's going to get filled. Some are going to get epoxy. Some are going to get stained. If it's an ebony piano, it wouldn't need to be stained, but there's other processes in there that have to, once those things are applied, they have to dry and sit for a little bit of time. So to get a good finish, here's another old Kanabi. Look at those beautiful legs. To get a good finish, you have to take every part of the piano apart that is possible, that is screwed or attached with a screw. We don't take pieces apart if it's a glue joint, those stay together, but anything that's screwed on comes apart. So all these little pieces have to have the number stamped somewhere on them so we know which piano they belong to, so we can put it all back together again. And here is our spray booth. So if you take a look in here, we've got pianos at various stages. Some of them have just stain on them and they're getting ready to be sprayed. Some of them have finish on them already, and we do a nitrocellulose lacquer. So this process is about 10 to 12 coats depending on how much is needed. And they spray 2 coats at a time, and in between each coat, after it cures, it has to be hand scuffed, and then they do it again. And so you're taking a lot of that finish off in between and then reapplying to get a really good final product. So that happens about 4 or 5 times, and so it has to sit in between each application. And sometimes we need it to sit a little bit longer, couple weeks, 3 weeks sometimes, just to make sure that it's curing properly in between each application of finish. So we have different stages of pianos going on in here. Another room, we've got pianos sitting over there just curing. And we also spray soundboards. So here's a Blüthner piano that the decal has been put on, and we do put a coat of finish over that soundboard. This is a new soundboard. It's got new bridge caps on there. They're protected because they don't get the finish on it, just the soundboard does. This piano has been refinished. It has all the coats of finish on it. And so now it's going through the bellywork area, which is we're going to head to next. So come on and we'll go to the belly work. After the finish is put on the piano, then it goes through the rest of the shop. But it doesn't have the final rub out. That's done at the very end, because going through the shop, sometimes it'll get some nicks or little dings that need to be repaired. So the finished people are the ones that are going to be actually touching the piano at the very end again. So come on over here, we'll talk about the soundboard, the bridges, and the pin block. So at this point in the tour, I usually ask if there's any questions. Feel free to put some questions in the comments if there's anything that you want some more clarification on. But here at Reader Pianos, we make our own soundboard. So come take a look in here. This is our dry room number 1. So in here, we have our soundboard lengths. Now we use a European spruce that we source from Switzerland in the Swiss Alps. And it is a very nice fine grain. Let me get a small piece so that you can take a look at it. Jim Reader goes through all these pieces of wood and he's very specific on what he wants. But you can see it's a very fine grain, grade A, Swiss spruce. And this company that we source from has a music division. And so when they open a tree, they take it to they cut the tree down and they take it to the sawmill. If it's not going to be as good as what they expected, they'll use it for something else. So this music division wood is only felled in the winter time. So this is the Swiss Alps, mountainous area, but in Switzerland you can't clear cut. They can only take a certain amount of trees a year, and so they have to select which trees they want. These are old growth trees, 200-year-old trees, and when they go in, they use a crane. So they'll go in with a crane, they'll cut the tree down, and then they pull it out with the crane. So they do this in the winter time, and the reason why they do it in the winter time is because you want the water content of the tree to be at its lowest point. And so that's in the winter. So then once they get the trees back to their sawmill, it's going to sit outside for a length of time before they actually even cut the tree. And then once they take it into the sawmill, they have a special machine to cut it how it needs to be cut for soundboard making. And pianos aren't the only instrument that uses Swiss spruce or a spruce material. Anything that has a string has a soundboard, and the soundboard is going to be a spruce tree, a spruce wood. So guitars, violins, a bass, a viola, a cello, all those are going to be using this type of wood, and this particular company supplies those companies as well. And so the piano is no different. We're gonna use the spruce for the soundboard. You can see it's not super thick, and it's gonna get a little thinner than that after we put it through the planer. And this is the heart of the piano. You need this wood to be a soft wood because you want the vibration, but it has to be a very fine grain because you want the structure of that to be very solid. You don't want it to split easily. So this is the first step. Now when Jim Reader, who still makes the soundboard, selects the wood, he wants to make them match. So he'll take pieces of wood out and he'll look at it if the grain is similar, if the color is similar, and he uses a pattern of the original. We're not trying to reinvent the wheel. We want to use the pattern of the original soundboard to make the new one. And then he will glue those planks together on this table here. And they're just flat glued. The glue joints are very stable, very solid. If you're going to have the soundboard crack because of the environmental conditions it's in, it probably won't crack along the glue joint. It'll crack along the grain. So you can take a look here. We got this piano kind of in limbo for a minute, but that is the machine that he puts the soundboards through once he glues them together. And that makes the wood soundboard nice and smooth, evenly smooth. Now come over here to our dry room number 2. So in here we have the soundboards that are made. So here's one. This is actually for a Blüthner, and you can see where the planks were glued together, and the soundboard itself is cut basically to the shape of the piano, but it still needs to be shaped again to fit it properly. But at this point, it's just the soundboard blank. Doesn't have the ribs on it. It's just ready to be shaped and the ribs to be put on at some point. So Jim usually tries to make these ahead of time so that they sit in here for a little while. One note on that, the reason why they're in the dry room is because we want the humidity level down to 6% or less. So these rooms are warm. When I was a kid, I used to come in here when I was cold in the wintertime just to warm up. They're nice and warm in here. So that's where these are sitting. And when Brian is ready, he'll grab this out and he'll be able to work on it and get it put in the piano, make it, put the bridge on, the ribs on, and get it ready for installation. But we are calculating the crown and the down bearing when we are installing it in the piano, and that's something that Brian is very good at. But it looks like he is sanding ribs and making ribs for this Blüthner over here that soundboard that I just showed you was made for. So let's take a look and see what he's doing today. Okay, so right now this Blüthner, we have the soundboard made and now we're making the rib. And so what Brian is doing, let's come on over here, is he's roughing in the ribs so that they fit exactly where they were originally. You can see that he's marked out here. In the case itself, there's notches. Maybe you can see over here. So they have to go in where those notches were. But then he knows exactly where to end them here where there's not a notch. And so he's roughing them in, and then he's going to cut them to the rib shape, and they're going to have that roundedness to them. The crown is going to be cut into the rib when he does that. So this is the next step in getting that ready to be installed in the piano. Now, just to mention on the case, this does have all the finish on it. It just has not had its final rub out, so it's still kind of milky. Once we finish that, the finish is going to look like this over here, which has been out of the restoration for a little while, but it's going to have more of a satiny sheen to it when it's all done. So come on over here, I'll show you the go table where we actually glue on the ribs once it's finished. So this is the go bar table or the go bar deck. And right here, you take these off, and the soundboard is going to fit flat, the face down on this table. And then if you look at those bars over there, those are the bars that go between the ribs and the ceiling. And by pressure, it's going to glue that rib to the soundboard. And so this is concave because the soundboard is going to go up, face down on here. And so that's the direction that you want the crown to go.
Do that again. I think I can kind of see it.
Maybe you can see it, I don't know. But this is what Jim made years ago in the 1970s, and he does describe making this. You can watch that in a separate video. It's very solid. He made it very well, and when we moved it into this facility, it took a lot of work and a lot of effort to get it over here. So this is old school. This is what they did when they first started making pianos in the 1800s. This is the way they did it. Yeah, there's new ways of doing it, but we've got a really great system here, so there's no need for us to change it. Takes a couple hours for the glue to dry, and then we can take it right on. So over here, is where the bridges are made. And we actually don't replace the entire bridge. We do what's called a bridge cap. And so we're cutting that top piece off, and we're replacing this only. And we want to keep the bottom piece because we want to make sure that's going to sit exactly where it was on the original soundboard. We're not trying to move that at all. We want it to be exactly in the right place. And that's because that's the scale. We don't want to mess with the scale. The original manufacturer has set exactly where that bridge needs to be to produce the notes that they want to produce along the, so when you play the piano, you're playing the right notes. And so Steinway has a different scale, Blüthner has a different scale, Mason Hamlin has a different scale, and that has to do with where the bridge is placed on that soundboard, so we don't want to change that. So the only thing we change is this top part. This is a maple. We source this from Michigan. There's lots of maple trees in Michigan, and that's a hardwood. That's very important because this is where the string is actually touching on that soundboard, is on the bridge, and it's got a lot of downward pressure. And so we want to make sure that this is going to be solid and hold the weight of that string pressing down into it. This is done by hand. We use a pattern of the original. We've got them over there too. So we know exactly where the pins should go. And so when we make it again, we can trace that and know exactly where it should go. We also measure it too. So we have written down for each piano the measurements, because that's very precise as well, and it's different. See, this is different than this, and this is going to be slightly different than this. And so we have all those so that when we make it, we can make it precisely how it was originally. And then when he does a chisel, he's got to make this angle all the same. He also has to make this angle all the same. And so that's very precise work done by hand. And that is also the way they used to do it in the olden days, the old school way of doing it. So then when we get that done, we clean it all up. It's glued onto the original bottom piece. We clean it all up, and then we put those pins in there according to the right size. There's various sizes. Those get pounded in there at whatever angle they need to be in. One other thing that's really important, and I don't have a new one to show you, but you see these are also hand drilled, and it's really important that we get that pin right in the center where the graphite line is. And so that's really important because we don't want false beats, we don't want convoluted tone, we want a nice clear tone, which this is going to really make a difference if you have this done accurately and precisely. So it's very important that this is done accurately and done well so that the piano sounds as good as it can be. Okay, so let's talk about the pin block or the rest plank. That is also done here in the bellywork area. So that's over here. Now, we do have the old ones, and we use those as a pattern for the original. And you'll notice on all these old pin blocks or rest planks that they are multi-laminate material. And most often what we use is this delignate multi-laminate, which is sourced from Germany. It's a beech wood. You can see there's multiple. I think you could probably count about 26 laminations in there. And they are laminated this way. So they're not just laid on top of each other, but they're laminated, turning the grain of the wood each direction. And we also use, this is a maple sourced from Canada. Occasionally we'll use that specifically if the customer requests it, but most of the product that we're going to use for the pin block is this delignate product. We use the original pin block as a pattern, and this sits underneath the plate. So you have to have this same pattern for the specific piano, because the plate, if you remember, has the holes already in it. So you have to have those holes sync up to what you're drilling so that you can pound the tuning pin in to this pin block. This is very important to have a pin block that holds those pins nice and tight, because if it doesn't, your piano won't stay in tune, and then every time the tuner pins it, it'll just go right back out. So this material does wear out. It's wood, and so that's why we replace it. And we want to make sure that this is going to hold those pins nice and tight, and it does a great job. So after that is made, the bridges are made, the ribs are glued on to the soundboard, then Brian is going to install that, and that is a multi-part process, which I don't have one to show you now, but it's fitting the soundboard, it's fitting the plate, making sure everything is going to fit in there properly, that the down bearing is where we want it to be, and that everything is going to be in the right position, so that when we put it over to the area to be strung, everything is sitting precisely where it needs to be in its original position. And then we roll it in here, And right now I've got a piano that is not going to be strung. This piano is just waiting for the customer to decide on the work that we're gonna do. But this is the area that the piano gets strung. And so you'll see in here we have our steel. This is German steel strings at different gauges, and we have patterns. These notebooks have all the pianos that we've done in the past, and we're using patterns of the original pianos to know what gauges to string them in. And then the copper wound strings, we order those specific for each piano. So when the dismantling happens, we get the pattern or the measurements. Then at that point, then we can put the order in and get the precise copper wound string for each instrument as it comes in. So those come closer to the time. We don't have them stored here. These are extras. We don't store them here until we're ready to do that part. Once the piano has been strung, then these doors open. Go ahead and follow me here. And these doors open, and then we can wheel the piano right through to the action department. So we'll talk about the process on this side now, and what happens, which is happening about the same time as the belly work.